got so much static in my hair. I'm trying to brush my hair for this video and it's all going whoosh. Hello BookTube. Welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth and it's time for my January wrap-up. Well, I had a really good reading month for January. If you saw my reading goals, you know that I set a goal to read an average of 17 books per month. Well, I just almost made it to the 17 this month. I read 16.3 books this month. The point 3 is an ebook that I am reading on my Kindle. I believe as of right now it says I am 39% done. So I'll tell you more about that book next month when I get that finished. But of the books that I finished, 6 of them were adult contemporary fiction, 4 of them were adult historical fiction, 1 was middle grade fiction, 1 was YA dystopian. I read 1 graphic novel, 1 cozy mystery, and that one was not included in the adult contemporary fiction. 1 Shakespeare play, and then 1 nonfiction self-help. And I finished 1 series that I had started previously, and then I read another trilogy in its entirety. I read 1 big book that was over 400 pages. In fact, it was over 700 pages. That was the longest book I read, and then the shortest book I read was 84 pages. I did have 2 books that were under 100 pages. 8 of the books were audiobooks, and 8 of them were in print. But if you translate the audiobooks into pages, it was a total of 4,595 pages. And then if you add in the pages that I read in the ebook, that averages about 150 pages a day. But again, that's not in print. About half of that is audio. So let's take a look at what I read. Now, some of these I talked about already in previous Friday reads, so I'm going to try not to go into too much detail about those and mainly focus on the ones that I have read in the last few days of the month. Now, I wanted to read some Christmas books in January because I didn't really get to read very many in December because I was finishing up all those big challenges that I was doing. So I've already talked about most of these in earlier Friday Reads videos, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I read Christmas in Harmony by Philip Gulley. This is 2.5 in the Harmony series, and it's just a little bitty book, less than 100 pages, and really super cute. Then I read 4 books by Richard Paul Evans. I think I've already talked about 3 of these. I read The Letter. I actually listened to an abridged version of this on audio, so I'm not really sure what the page equivalent of this is, but this finished the Christmas box series for me. Then I read this entire series. The last one I did get on audio, but the first one is The Mistletoe Promise. Then The Mistletoe Inn, and The Mistletoe Secret. The Mistletoe Secret was about a man who was divorced and lonely, and his friend suggested that he go on the internet and try an internet dating site. Well, in searching around the internet dating sites, he stumbled across a blog of a woman who he started to fall in love with while reading her blog, and she didn't have any way to contact her or any contact information on her blog, so he used the clues from her blog and set about on a journey to try to find her. So it's really sweet and romantic. Of course, like any Richard Paul Evans books, there are ups and downs. The plot twist in this one I wasn't as crazy about as I have been in some of his previous books, but overall I would definitely recommend the series. They were really nice Christmas romance reads, and I enjoyed all 3 of them. A few others I've already talked about. This was my biggest book of the month. This is The Plains of Passage by Jean M. Auel, book 4 in the Earth Children series. And I listened to it on audio. One of my shorter books for the month, The Titan's Curse. This was actually a reread. I didn't think I had read this one, but it turns out, according to Goodreads, I read it last year. But anyway, I took the time to read it again. I went ahead and counted it, and this is the graphic novel of book 3 of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series by Rick Riordan. I read 1 play. I read A Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare, and I read this because Sarah from Novel Expectations announced that she was going to do a Shakespeare read-along and read 1 play each month during this year. So when she put out her TBR a couple of days ago, I asked her what the Shakespeare play was going to be for this month, and she said, "Ack, Shakespeare and I didn't really get along." Well, truth be told, Shakespeare and I didn't really get along either, but if she decides to continue with the project, then I'm in, but if she decides to abandon it, then that's fine too, because I certainly have plenty of other things to read. So we'll see what happens. But for January, I did read A Midsummer Night's Dream. It was pretty difficult. I don't know if I've ever read any whole Shakespeare plays in their entirety. I'm sure I've read excerpts, and I've seen lots of Shakespeare performed, but it was difficult to read. This was less than 100 pages, but it took me quite a while to get through it and to semi-understand it, and then I had to read the notes and things like that. So I got the gist of it, but it was a tough read. The nonfiction book that I read for this month is Lose the Clutter, Lose the Weight, The 6-Week Total Life Slim Down by Peter Walsh. Now, I pretty much have just read this from beginning to end, but I am going to go ahead and try this 6-week program. Not so much the diet, because I am already restarted Atkins, and I'm on the Atkins diet right now, but I am going to try his 6-week plan for decluttering and see if I can shape up my house a little better and get things in better order. It's always good at the beginning of the year to kind of do some deep cleaning and decluttering and getting organized. So these kind of books give me the motivation for that. And I did enjoy this a lot. Peter Walsh is great. I've seen him on television. Some people may know him from Oprah, but before that he was the organizer on a show called Clean Sweep, and it was just a lot of fun to watch. I was a big fan of the show. I wish it was still on. I listened to this on audio, and then I got the print book from the library. I wanted to be able to see the illustrations of the exercises and just get a better idea of the program as a whole. I only got one of the Sunshine State books read for this month. It's The Honest Truth by Dan Gemeinhart. And this was really good. It's about a young boy who is diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, I believe some sort of cancer, and he doesn't want to spend the rest of his life in a hospital. So he runs away to climb a mountain. That has been his dream, and he is determined to do it. And he takes his little dog with him, and it's just really a compelling story. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and I would recommend it, especially if you like middle grade books. I thought it was really excellent. This is one of the books that my daughter Katie has been wanting me to read for quite a while. It's called Alive by Scott Sigler, and it is the first in a trilogy. The third book is coming out later in 2017, but this was really good. It's a sci-fi adventure. I'm not really going to tell you much about it because you really need to go in blind. I think I already mentioned this in my last Friday Reads video, but it's just a crazy premise. If you like science fiction, dystopian kind of books, then I think you would enjoy it. Now, the rest of the books I read this month had to do with one book club or another. I read one book for the Book One Cozies Club, first in series Cozy Mystery Book Club, that is hosted by Di from Dice's 19 Hearts. This had been one of the December picks that I did not get read, and it is Mistletoe Murder by Leslie Meyer. It's the first in the Lucy Stone mystery series. This was a really quick read. I had been trying to get to this all month. Finally, on January 31st, I read it from beginning to end, and truth be told, I was up a little past midnight just getting it finished, but I'm still counting it for January, and I really wanted to get at least one of these Christmas themed cozy mysteries read before I got completely out of the Christmas mood. The rest of them I think I'm just going to leave for later, but this one I wanted to get read. It's only a little over 200 pages, and it was enjoyable. There were a couple of random bits of dialogue that I thought kind of came out of left field, but overall I thought it was fun. The characters are likable. It was an interesting mystery that I did not figure out until very close to the end. Then for my local book club, our January selection was Cold Sassy Tree by Olive Ann Burns. I was able to get that on audio through Hoopla, and I listened to it on my phone, so I was able to get through it very quickly. It was historical fiction based in 1906, and it was just fantastic. I talked a little bit about it in one of my earlier Friday Reads. I think I'm going to do a whole video on it and its sequel because I read it too. I read Leaving Cold Sassy. Now, the first half of Leaving Cold Sassy is the first 15 chapters of the unfinished sequel, which was actually going to be called Time, Dirt, and Money, and that was unfinished because Olive Ann Burns passed away before she could finish it. Then the rest of the book is a biographical memoir of sorts that is written by her editor about Olive Ann and the different experiences with writing and publishing and publicizing Cold Sassy Tree, and then the eventual writing of the first of the unfinished sequel, and bits about her life, and then ending with her death. So this book was really half and half fiction and half biography. I really enjoyed reading it. Now, I'm not sure that I would have really enjoyed the story in the direction that it looks like she was going, but it's really hard to say. So I don't want to go into too much detail right now. I will probably just do an entire video on these two books. Then, because I'm going to be doing some themed reading for February and March, I decided to go ahead and get my February book done for Library Book Club, and that is Big Trouble by Dave Barry. Sometimes we do a Florida themed book for book club. This one is set in a fictitious town in Florida, and you may, I don't know if you can tell from this, but the audiobook that I got from the library has the movie tie-in cover, and as I was listening to it, I was able to pick out just about every actor and what role he played, just based on, you know, that actor and how they look and everything. I missed a couple of them, but it was still a lot of fun. I also did get the print book, which I've already returned, and followed along a little bit in print, but it was just an insane book, totally crazy. And I have to say, though, because I usually talk a lot about language, that there was a lot of foul language in this book. But the funny thing is that Dave Barry even says in his intro, he gives a disclaimer, because he does write a lot of books that are enjoyed by young people, and he says, this book is for adults. The people and the characters in this book are criminals. They do, you know, a lot of bad things, and they use bad language. He said, I didn't want them to use bad language, but they went ahead and did it anyway. So, you know, and the whole book is just crazy like that. So this was a lot of fun, despite the fact that it had a lot of bad language. It's basically about a bunch of bumbling criminals, so you can figure that the language that was used in the book is probably pretty realistic. Then one of the last books I finished was our March selection for book club, because in March I want to read only mysteries, because it's going to be March Mystery Madness, that I decided to go ahead and pick up Nora Webster by Colm Tóibín. And this is an Irish book. It's set in Ireland, I believe in the 60s, and it's about a woman with 4 children. Her 2 daughters are just about grown, and then she has 2 younger sons, and she's widowed at in her mid-40s, and it's just basically the story of the next 3 years and her life and how she's picking up the pieces and moving on. It doesn't really have a huge plot, but it's a very interesting account of her life and her children and the friends that come in and out of her life, and the things and the activities that she does. And sometimes she does things that she thinks she's going to be criticized for, because she should be grieving and be in mourning, but yet she's trying to, you know, pick up the pieces of her life and move forward. So, you know, it has a lot of interesting themes, and also a bit of Irish history that I really don't know much about at all. So I found it very interesting. It's not going to be my favorite book of the year. It wasn't particularly exciting or mind-blowing, but it was a very enjoyable read, and I'm glad I read it. So those are my books for January. I've got a lot of fun books picked out for February, so come back soon for my February TBR. Meanwhile, I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.